What are Microsoft Teams? Well, Microsoft Teams actually has a history of several different Microsoft enterprise software products. They were all centered on collaboration. So you have Exchange, which is Microsoft's premier email and messaging application. And then you had SharePoint, which was a web-based interactive collaborative tool that most organizations did have installed on premises. And people would say, hey, I'm going to the SharePoint team site for this project, or I'm going to go into SharePoint and save some files and work on some editing with you on a spreadsheet. That was very typical types of conversations that happened before we had Teams. And then there was this product that was called Link, L-I-N-Q. And it later got rebranded as Skype for Business. And this product provided instant messaging capabilities along with really, really nice video conferencing and meeting capabilities. And it also had the ability to be set up as a phone system. So when you take the functionality of Link that became Skype for Business and you add in the functionality of SharePoint and you add in the functionality of Exchange, that kind of gives you an idea of what they decided to do with Microsoft Teams. They took this product, this software product, gave it a friendly user interface that's pretty intuitive and said, hey, we're just going to give all these collaborative tools one entry point, which is Microsoft Teams. And from a security perspective, they took something that they had invented in Exchange called a unified group. And that is a specialized group that allows for collaboration and collaboration tools when you create the group. And they said, look, when you create a team, it's going to create what's now called a Microsoft 365 group. And when that group gets created, it's going to create these collaborative spaces, a shared mailbox in Exchange, and a SharePoint Online site collection with a SharePoint Online modern team site. And what we're going to do is we're going to use that as the glue and put this user interface over it that we call Microsoft Teams. And then we're going to really optimize the UI, the user interface, to allow for a very powerful collaborative experience, but it's all in one place. So a collaboration and communication one-stop shop, if you will. Now for security teams, for security staff, they're going to really enjoy the fact that Teams offers out of the box an approach to security called role-based access control, role-based control. If you're collaborating in a team, you're going to be assigned by the team owner a role for that team. And that role is actually a Microsoft 365 group role behind the scenes, but you're either an owner, probably you created and managed that team, or you're a member, which means you're doing a lot of creation of things and uploading of files and editing of files and adding tasks and doing all the things that are involved in creating and manipulating objects for that team. Or you're a guest. You're someone who has basically read-only permissions. You can do chat with other team members. You can see files. You can download files, but you can't upload or edit files that are on the Files tab for that team. So we're going to get into all that. But that's what Microsoft Teams is. You can sum it up in this bullet point here: a collaboration and communication one-stop shop. Now, next thing we're going to cover are some bullet points. I'm not going to spend too much time on these because it's a lot of words and I'm not going to read the slides. But the idea is we're going to cover these main user interface components and become familiar with them. We're going to talk about the app bar, the main content area, the command bar, the profile icon, the command box, and the compose message box and the settings pages. You can refer back to these slides. After the class, you have access to these slides, so you can refer back to this later on for reference. But what we're going to do is we're going to actually go into the user interface now, and I'm going to highlight these different sections, and I'm going to move myself out of the way, and then we're going to talk about what they are. So this is a screenshot of a team. If I go over to my demo machine here, you'll see this is like a screenshot of this. And the first thing we're going to focus on is on this left-hand side. The name of this is called the app bar. And I'm gonna go back to the slides. The app bar is highlighted on this slide. And the app bar is comprised of several different icons. If you click on any of those different icons, that will affect what appears on the right-hand side of the Teams user interface that we call the content area. And the content area is where we do our work in Teams. So we'll click on some icon on the left-hand side of the app bar, and then that will change the content area to be contextual to whatever it is that we clicked on. And then we'll begin doing our work based on what we clicked on in the app bar. So from a navigational perspective, for someone who's using Teams, the first thing I want to share with you is, hey, you open up Teams, you sign in, and typically if you open up Microsoft Teams, and you don't probably even have to sign in, because the security team, the IT team group, like meaning the team as far as like the IT people in your organization, will typically have configured so that when you sign on to your computer, your laptop, your workstation, it automatically will sign you in to Microsoft 365, and you'll automatically just be signed into Teams. That's most likely how it's configured. But if you had to sign in, you would sign in with the account you would use to access SharePoint Online or any of the Microsoft 365 products and services. Teams now knows who you are, and it will automatically adjust a bunch of stuff around you. And what you do is you say, all right, I'm signed into Teams. Now you take control over the experience. And what you do is you say, this is what I want to do in Teams. And you tell Teams what you want to do by selecting an icon in the app bar. And then it will say, okay, you want to work with activity. I'll change the content area to reflect activity, and we'll go from there. So the content area is highlighted here on this slide on the right side. The app bar is on the left side. Now, going down the icons that you're going to see on the app bar, the first one is activity. Later on in the class, towards the end, we're going to look at notifications and settings, and we're going to see that we do have some control over what we're going to see in this activity. But typically, it's going to show all the latest chats or instant message activity that you had with people, maybe some that you haven't answered yet. Someone's maybe sent you a message and you haven't answered it yet. That's going to show up in your activity. Or other people can actually note you and kind of reach out to you and tag you by putting the @ symbol before your Team's username, and that will be what's called a mention. And if they mention you and you have your notification set up, you'll also see those mentions or those call outs if you choose activities on the app bar in Teams. Now, the next thing we're going to highlight, the next one down, is chat. Now, me personally, and I'm going to go over to my demo machine here, and everyone has different preferences. I click chat here, and this is not my production Teams. This is a demo environment that I have. But typically, if you went to my desktop and you happen to stand behind me and you saw me in Teams, I'd probably have this window open, chat, because I use the instant messaging functionality in Teams quite a bit to talk to different people in production, different people in different departments. If somebody in sales has a question, they know they can quickly open a chat, an instant message connection with me, and I'm probably going to have my chat icon selected on the app bar, and I'm immediately going to be notified, hey, Spike, do you know what the IP address is of blah, 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 blah? And I'm going to go, oh, yeah, here's the IP address, or here's some practice text questions. I just uploaded a file for a class, things like that. I use the chat quite a bit in Teams, and you probably do too. So getting back to Teams here, if you click chat, you will see all of the recent chats and people that you've chatted with. If you click activity or chat, either one of these two icons in the Teams user interface, the content area will sort of separate into two sections. The left-hand section will kind of be a navigational component for the chat, if you're in chat. And activities, it'll be a navigational component for activities. And the right side will be the details of that specific item. So this is very, very similar to what you might experience if you work with email applications. And if you were to think of each one of these are all recent chats and activities. If you were to think of, for example, I have this chat with Adam Fredericks. think of this as like an email message, and I can kind of see a summary of it. But if I click on it on the right-hand side in the content area, it goes to the details of that specific chat. Hey, are you coming to the meeting? And I'm going to send them back a message. No, I'm teaching a class right now. And I hit send, and it immediately goes to Adam. Now, truth of the matter is, Adam is a fake person. Nobody actually received that. But if I signed in with Adam's account on one of my virtual machines, I would see as if Adam got that message. But that's kind of how we do things. So when we're talking about the content area, when we're on either activity or chat, you'll actually see it split into two sections. And just think of it like if you have any experience with Outlook and you can see messages and click on them and see the details of the message. The next section is the team section. On the left-hand side, again, the content area is split into two sections. On the left-hand side, you're going to see a listing of your teams. In other words, because you're signed in, because the team's application knows who you are, it's going to present you with a list of teams that you're a part of. Now, the default is to show all of these teams. It is possible. I'm going to go to my demo machine and I'm going to click teams, and you're going to see that I'm an owner actually of many teams. You could see all of them listed here. But let's say there's this team called the My Awesome Team Demo or Awesome Team Demo. And let's say I am a member of that, but it's kind of clouding up my my user interface, or I want to focus on some other teams. I can click the ellipse, which is the three dots. Microsoft loves to present user interface with these three dots. I can click that, and one of the options is to say hide. And what will happen is it will tuck that up into a subheading called hidden teams. So manage a project. Let's say I'm not working on that team right now. I'm a member of that team. In fact, I'm an owner, but I'm not working on it. And I can click hide. Onboard employees. Maybe I'm part of that, but I'm not really doing anything with that project right now. I can click on that ellipse, the three dots, and I can click hide. And what you'll see is it's actually keeping them in my navigational menu. In fact, if I click that black triangle, I like to call that the black UFO triangle UI, and it will expand, and I can see all of my teams that are currently hidden. Now, the reason that I do this, and I'll just kind of go through and hide a few more just to give you an idea, is what I'll do is a lot of times especially in my role, I'll be a part of several different teams, but I'm not actively like that particular day, for example, working on, let's say I'm a member of 20 teams. I'm really that day maybe only interacting with 4 or 5 of them. I like to hide the teams that I'm not working on that day. They're very easily accessible. If I need to get to them, I can just expand hidden teams and unhide them. I can do that by saying, hey, you know what, Spike? Actually, we're going to be working on the Adopt Office 365 team today. I can go in there and say, all right, and I can just say show. And now that team is now no longer under hidden teams. It's shown. But if I hide it, the advantage that I have with hiding these teams, and I'll even sometimes hide everything except the exact team I'm working on. So I'm just going to kind of give you an idea of what my teams might look like. Even though I'm part of 10, 20 teams, I've hidden most of them, and now I can focus in on just the teams that I want to work with at that time. And I personally find this to be a very, very useful tip when I'm working with Microsoft Teams. So getting back to the slides, when you click on Teams, the default is it shows you all the teams that you're a member of. And you'll see that it will have this triangle icon on the left-hand side. Let me go back to my demo machine, the one that I called the black UFO triangle. If the triangle is pointed this way, so if the triangle is pointed at the name of the team, that indicates that you can click on it and it has stuff underneath it. And so when I click on that triangle, it flips to now it's pointing down, and that's when I'll see things that are underneath it, which in Microsoft Teams are going to be things called channels. So just know that if you're working with, for example, My Amazing Team, and you can either click on My Amazing Team and it will expand, or you can click directly on the black UFO triangle. Mike, by the way, want to be very clear. That is not the official name by Microsoft. I've never seen Microsoft refer to that as the black UFO triangle. It just works for me, so I apologize for imposing that on you. But it helps me remember those black UFO triangles can be pointed one way or the other, and I know if they're pointed down, they're expanded, and I can see what's underneath them. So getting back to the slides, when we're working with Teams, clicking on the Teams icon in the app bar, that's the user interface we're going to be working with. The next user interface component I want to focus on is Calendar. And Calendar works just like you're probably used to other calendar controls that you've probably worked with. So if you worked with Outlook and you click on the calendar icon and it shows you the calendar, that's very much the same thing here. But the calendar in Teams is really focused on the idea of interacting with scheduling and or attending or just impromptu setting up like right now meetings. And the views that are in the calendar, I'm going to go to my demo box here. I'm going to click on the calendar app bar icon, and then I'm going to look at this view. The calendar views are day, which is today, work week, which is typically Monday through Friday, week, which will be 7 days, and then an agenda. There's not really this default monthly view that we get with Outlook. It's very focused on this week or today or right now. And the calendar view, you can get to it quickly in the Microsoft Teams application by clicking the calendar icon in the app bar. And we're going to come back and look closer at the calendar view. The next app bar icon I want to talk about is calls. If you click on calls, the content area is going to be focused on interacting with calls. Very similar to activities or chat. If you look on the left-hand side, you'll have a list of contacts that you've either used Microsoft Teams to call before or that are part of your contacts that have been imported for you by you or by an IT or Teams administrator. You'll see these. You can literally click off a call with this application, and the same user interface controls that you would use if you were attending a meeting. Like a lot of us are going to have headphones, and when you join a team, it will say, do you want to use your microphone and your headphones or your speakers or whatever you're typically using on your computer, your laptop. Teams will try and use that for an input device and a listening device. That's the same thing that will be used by calls if you make a call with the Teams application. Now, if your organization is using Microsoft Teams as their entire phone system, and I don't know if that's the case or not, it's quite possible that it's not, then Teams can integrate in several different ways with the phone system, and you may see some extra stuff that I don't have on this screen because it's been integrated. But if you're using Microsoft Teams for phone calls, for Teams calls, you can come here as well. Now, I'm going to go back one section to the calendar section. The calendar section is not the content area. If you click on the calendar icon, notice the content area, just the whole thing is the calendar section. But most of the other icons like calls, activity, chat, and Teams, it breaks the content area up into sort of a master details view where you click on something in that left part of the content area and it affects what's on the right part of the content area. So it's just a slight different user interface, and Microsoft's trying to maximize the real estate that it assigns to the calendar area. A newer icon that is up here is OneDrive. And if you have an account with Microsoft, so typically you'll have a Microsoft 365 or Office 365 license assigned to you, which is typically how you get access to use Teams, then you have a OneDrive for Business, which is basically a giant file share in the cloud. It's really actually a SharePoint online document library dedicated to you, but that doesn't matter in this class. Just know that you have an icon that goes to OneDrive, and that will expose like an iframe, a framed in view in the content area of whatever's in your OneDrive. I love that they added this in. This is an awesome addition, and it's fairly new. Like it wasn't, you didn't have the OneDrive icon, a couple years ago. Last but not least for now is this apps icon, which appears with the word apps and kind of a plus sign. The reason that it does this plus sign is because apps are used to extend what the Microsoft Teams application can do. There are vendors that write applications that are deployed as Teams apps. So typically what happens is you add an app here if you're allowed to, and you may have a catalog of apps that your IT department has purchased licenses for or custom written, and you'll see them appear here. Some organizations actually let team owners purchase apps. That may or may not be the case. A lot of times in more HIPAA restricted environments, that's going to be whittled down to pre-selected apps. But if you see apps here and you're allowed to add them, you can add them here. And then where you'll see them surface is you're on a Teams channel and you can click add a tab. You'll attach that tab to one of these apps, and whatever the application developers made that app do, it uses that Teams tab as the user interface, and that's where we'll see these apps surface. A lot of organizations are not going to want just everybody adding apps and doing things with apps. That's going to be up to however you guys have that set up. But if you see that icon, that's why it's a plus sign, because it's meant to extend the Teams tabs experience and what Teams can do. The next UI component we want to familiarize ourselves with is the command box. The command box most people end up using because they want to search for something inside of Teams. It's always at the top, it's available, it's very powerful and very helpful, and you can do a search, and Microsoft Teams will make sure that in the search results it presents to you, it's not something that you're not allowed to see. So it's not like you're going to search for HR review documents for Spike and my reviews are going to come up. It's only going to filter to what you're actually allowed to see, typically something from one of the teams that you're involved in. And then the next UI component is going to be the profile icon. This one, when you sign into Teams, it's going to present whatever icon you have that's associated with your ID in your organization will show up. We had a Halloween costumes last year, and I dressed up like a vampire because our whole department dressed up like vampires. So they gave me a picture of that, so I use it for my development box icon. In any case, you'll have information about you, and then you can actually set your status. So if I go back over to my demo machine and I click on my icon here, my profile icon, I can actually set my status. And right now I have several options. And one of them is busy, one of them is do not disturb, one of them is be right back or appear away. These are meant to let other people know, hey, I'm not rude right now. I'm teaching a class, so I'm going to set it to busy. So if they go to interact with me, they'll say, oh, Spike's busy right now. They'll still be able to send me a message, but they may not expect me to answer right away. So some of this will happen automatically. There will be, like, if you step away from Teams for a while, you don't interact with it, maybe you go to lunch, you log off your machine, you may come back and you may not have set that to status to busy, but it may be temporarily offline. Teams will kind of try and help you with that to let you know based on how much activity you're using, actually interacting with the application. So the last part of the user interface we're going to talk about in this class to introduce you to what you're dealing with is this compose message box. So going over to my demo machine here, I'm going to click on the chat icon in the app bar, and that is going to push that compose message icon right here. I'm going to say, hey, I want to send a new message. I'm going to send a message to Amy. So I could just click on Amy here and all of our interactions will be appearing down here to the right. But if I didn't do that, I just wanted to compose a message from nothing, I can click that icon to start a new chat. We'll say, who do you want to chat with? And I'll say Amy. And then it's going to do a search. Teams is really good about finding people if you have some thing about their name. Sometimes you meet someone at your organization you knew and you can't remember their name, that can become a little bit harder. But if you even know, like, I think their name's Amy, I think their name's Jim, something like that, you can get a lot of help from teams to find them. I can add chats to multiple people as well, but if I just want a one-to-one chat to Amy, I can find, okay, there's Amy. Hey, Amy, thank you for the insights at the marketing webinar. I learned a lot. I think a lot's supposed to be 2 words. Is hit send. Boom. Amy is going to immediately get that message. Again, just for complete clarity, there really is no such person as Amy. It's just make believe, made up through a script. So I'd have users I can interact with. But if there was an Amy, Amy would get that message. Hey, I really enjoyed your webinar, learned a lot. Thank you. And now that's going to append that to all interactions I have with Amy automatically for me. I don't have to do any pre-configuring. It's going to allow me to do that, which is great. So when you're learning about a new product like Microsoft Teams, it's healthy to learn about the background, which we went over. It's also healthy to learn about why you're using Microsoft Teams, which hopefully we kind of covered that. And then it's just taking that mystery out of the user interface. So we covered the app bar, the content area, the message area, and a few other components, things you're going to use on a daily basis. And hopefully that gave you some insights, especially if you're newer to Teams or you're not sure, or if you're just like, this thing's kind of intimidating. If that's the case, hey, hopefully that's no longer the case. Now there's another section I want to cover, and that's here, the settings pages. When you are working with Microsoft Teams, again, you're going to be having a particular role for a particular team. So I'm over here on my demo box. I'm going to click on Teams. When I click on Teams, I'm going to be looking here at the different teams that I haven't hidden. And if I go to my amazing team, which is at the top, and I select more options, I can click on Manage Team. When I go to Manage Team, I can see that I have some information about this particular team. The first piece of information I see is, hey, there is one team owner. That's that role-based access control. Whatever the permissions are for owners of a team, since I'm an owner, I have. And owner permissions essentially have what are called full control permissions on this team. That doesn't mean I can do anything on any other team, but on this team, I have the role of owner, which means I pretty much can do anything administratively on this team that I'm allowed to do. I also have, if I expand this area, one member who's Abel. Abel is a member, and Abel can do whatever members can do. So where I configure this as an owner is here on this settings page. If I click on settings, these are the settings for this team, and I can see these settings because I'm an owner. If I expand member permissions, I can actually greatly affect, as the owner, whether or not, for example, members can create and update channels. We're going to talk about channels, but that's a very powerful thing for people to be able to do, is a channel. So we see here on the left-hand side that I've got a team, and then underneath it I have awesome first channel, fourth, second, and third. Each one of these represents a channel. This is the team, and this is this team's channels. A lot of times when I've done training in the past, people have asked me, okay, when should I create a team? And when should I instead just create a channel or add a channel to a team? So for me, the guiding principle there, and every organization has to decide on what they want to do here, but the guiding principle for me is, if it's the same people, that's a team. And if it's the same people, every idea, every project, everything that particular group of people works on, that's a channel. Very, very common for me as an IT professional to go into an organization and to go to each of the departments and give each of those departments a team and then the people that, and make all the people that are in that particular department members of that team, and then train and assign a couple people to be owners that will be working with all the settings of their department team, for example. Then, for example, I've set up teams for developers where there's a developer group that works on the website. So there'd be a web development team, and all the people that are in the web development group would be members of that team, and the managers of that group would be the owners. It doesn't really necessarily have to be managers that are owners. It just tends to work out that way because the developers are going to be the people who are creating the content, working back and forth, sharing ideas, collaborating, and building out those products. And then in that particular situation, what we would do is every project, so the developer team might be working on 10 to 20 different projects or more, we would create a channel for every project. And then that works out really, really well. That's a very, very common approach. So going over to this demo, this amazing team, this is the awesome first channel. In the past, Microsoft automatically created a channel called General, and you may still see General channels on a lot of different teams. If I expand some of these other ones, almost all of them actually come with a General channel. I'm expanding this. I don't know why it's not expanding here. But if I expand some of these teams, you'll see that the General channel has been very popular in the past. It's just getting stubborn. In any case, on my amazing team, so let me collapse my teams here. If I click on channels over here, if I click on my channels, these are tabs. So this is my amazing team, and these are the channels for my team. So I'm going to go to manage team, and these are the channels for this team. And with the channels for my team, I have each channel has different tabs. So here's the awesome first channel. Here's the fourth channel. And I clicked on this too fast. This channel has these tabs. These tabs are where the actual members of the team work with the different channels. So if I had several different, let me close down the Teams application. Sometimes it gets a little stubborn like that. And then I'm going to reopen it and see if I can't get those channels to be a little bit more lively. That was it, just kind of an interesting pause there. I'll go back to Teams here, and then I can click. Typically, you go between channels like this. Yeah, it came back to life. If I click on the second channel, this gives me tabs that I can use to interact with that second channel. If I click on the fourth channel, that gives me tabs to interact with that fourth channel. So very frequently with Teams, what will happen is you'll have, let's say like the example I was giving, a team of developers, and they have 10 projects. Each project would get a channel, but it's the same group of developers that are working, and any member of the team, they can have the same security access to all the different components of all the channels because they're part of that team. Now, one of the things that Microsoft introduced was this idea of a private channel. And the idea there was really, really interesting. I'm going to move myself out of the way here, and I'm going to kind of draw here. So imagine that you have a developer team. So let's say this represents a team, and each of these squares is going to represent a person that's on that team. They're all part of the development team. And so these will represent the channels. There's project 1's channel, there's project 2's channel, there's project 3's channel, etc., etc. And let's say the team, the development team that works on all the projects, they all work on all these different projects. This might be adding search to the website. This might be creating a new authentication login control. This might be creating new product pages. But then this one, the same development team gets this one project, and maybe that project has a requirement of top secret clearance. Maybe it's a special government contract, and they require that anybody that works on that particular project or accesses the different components of that project has to be vetted and have top secret clearance. And you have a really powerful development team, but only 3 of the members have top secret clearance. Well, you got a choice there. You could say, all right, are we going to go ahead and create a brand new team? I probably would. But Microsoft introduced this type of channel for this exact scenario where you have a channel that only a subset of the members of a team can collaborate on or access. And that is called a private channel. So that was introduced a few years ago. And what happens is a team owner can add a private channel. And if they add a private channel, then only the members the team owner assigns to that channel can interact with the artifacts that are part of that channel. So it kind of solves that problem that people were running into. But again, for me personally, I would create a different team in that scenario, but it is possible that you may be in a situation where that scenario comes up where it's like, no, we really just need to have a channel in this particular instance that allows for all the team members except or a subset of the team members to access that one project, that one channel. We don't want to do a whole new team. We don't want to do all that. We just want a private channel. Microsoft does allow for that. Now, one of the things that you're going to want to know about is this settings menu. So next to your icon, in addition to the team having settings, and actually channels have settings pages as well, you have this ellipse next to your icon, and there you'll see the settings gear. If you're clicking on the settings gear next to your icon, you're able to interact with controlling the team's application experience for you. Now, I'm not going to go through each and every one of these options and what each of the checkboxes do or don't do. I just want you to know that that settings gear next to your profile takes you here. And if you look down the side, you could see that you can change settings that affect how Teams works for you in the general category, appearance and accessibility, notifications and activity, accounts and organizations, privacy, devices, calls, captions and transcripts, files and links, apps, permissions, and recognition. The ones I really would like to have you focus on is this one, and we're going to have a slide for this, notifications and activity. This is where you can take full control as a user of Microsoft Teams of when Teams is letting you know that something Teams knows about has happened. A lot of times, if we have really active Microsoft Teams interaction from our organization, we'll get a little bit overloaded with notifications. People are mentioning us. We're getting notified. Hey, you got mentioned in this. Maybe you just did a webinar, a lunch and learn for your group, and there was 20 people there. And people are like, oh, just went to the lunch and learn with @Spike, learned a lot, blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, you're ding, 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 ding. You're getting all kinds of notifications and it's overwhelming. You can take control of that. You don't have to live with the defaults. Whatever you're allowed to change here will affect just your user interaction, just your team's experience. So when we're learning about Microsoft Teams and we're learning about getting more familiar with it, I want you to feel very comfortable that you can control your Microsoft Teams experience. You can go to the settings. You can affect things about your profile, the theme, any devices, meaning when we talk about devices, if you happen to have headphones and you have headphones that have a microphone and you have a built-in microphone, you can configure which of those are going to be the default if you're making a call or joining a meeting. You have some privacy settings. Notifications are going to be the big one. That's usually when I work with groups that are embarking with Microsoft Teams, this tends to be the first place they end up going to, especially as more and more people are using Teams more and more. They can feel like they want to take control over the notifications, how they're notified and what they're notified about. So take some time when you get a chance and look at those different settings and maybe do some searching or try and figure out what it is you want to do to customize the experience for your team. So you go, that's for the settings gear that's next to your icon there, and you can navigate to the different subheadings of areas of settings on the left-hand side. So I've been doing the demos, but I want to focus in, like I said, on notifications and activity. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and I'm going to go down to this @mentions. Now, this is a really cool thing that people can do. They can essentially tag you by putting the @ and then your name in chats and messages and posts. And whenever that happens, if you have this to on, right now I have show inactivity and banner for channel and team mentions. And if I have show inactivity and banner and someone mentions me, if I click on the activity icon, I'm going to see that somebody mentioned me and somebody tagged me. If I click on show inactivity and banner, I'm actually going to have a banner pop up. Hey, somebody mentioned you, blah, 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 blah. And sometimes that can be disruptive. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll just change it to show inactivity. When I know I'm going to do like a webinar or something that there's going to be a lot of activity where people might be mentioning me, and I'm just going to have it show an activity versus show an activity and banner. You get to control that. You get to control the @mentions, when everyone in chat mentions you, replies to channel posts. If you reply to a post in a chat or someone replies to a post that you made on a channel, you can be notified of that as well. Likes and reactions. There's all kinds of notifications that you can control when you're notified about. And I'd encourage you to feel comfortable as you work with Microsoft Teams to be able to go through and adjust how Teams communicates with you and what your experience is with the Teams application. You're in control of a huge amount of that by going to that settings page and changing or altering those settings. And again, sometimes I change those settings several times in a week, depending on what I'm doing. It's just that I'm kind of controlling my user experience with Teams when I want to just like let everything fly and tell me everything. And sometimes I want like, look, I'm working on some code right now. I just want to kind of tone it down. I need to have my Teams open, but I don't need the banners to constantly be pinging me. All right, so what is in a team? Well, let's talk about that now. So it's time to have this conversation. First off, when you create a team, I like to think of it as a box, and that box is given a name. That is the name of the team. That is important. It's a really good idea for organizations to agree upon what we call a naming convention. So typical things you might see in a naming convention is, hey, we don't use spaces, we use dashes. That's something that can be very handy because behind the scenes, the Microsoft team, when it gets created, it goes through and creates a Microsoft 365 group, which goes through and creates a shared mailbox and a SharePoint site collection. And it's going to use that team name in all of the URLs to get to all those resources, all the web-based stuff. It's going to try and incorporate that team. And if you have a space in the name of a team, anytime it's in a URL, it has to encode a space with %20, and that's 3 characters. So just that's more than you need to worry about for this class, but just know that if you have a naming convention, a well thought out naming convention, it can be really helpful. For example, if I wanted to do a naming convention, I might say like, hey, we're going to have all of our teams for the HR department. We're going to have them start with HR. So your team's going to be HR, and then it's going to be maybe like East Coast. And then I know that the West Coast team is going to be, all right, our team is going to be HR-West-Coast, and North is going to be HR-North, and then South is going to be HR-South. So all of the teams are going to follow this naming convention. The cool thing is, if I'm searching for HR teams, it'd be very easy for me to do a search for the string HR. And because everybody followed that naming convention, that's going to allow me to quickly find all the things I'm looking for. But that's going to be up to your organization, but it's a really good idea. So a team starts with a name, hopefully following a naming convention, and it's based on a template. So every team starting out that's based on the same template, it's going to be like going in and getting a track home that's based on the model. Just give me the standard. They'll build you the home exactly as the model is. You have the opportunity to customize it after it's made, but that's going to be its starting point. So a team is made up of a name, it's based on a template, and that's going to determine all the initial settings, and then it's going to determine the initial channels. Now, Microsoft made a really cool change recently, and they must have got a lot of pushback because their default template started with one channel called General. And people are like, man, I just wish I could change that. You could change the name, but people just wanted to be able to have interaction. The good news is if I click over here on my demo machine and I click on Teams, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hide most of my teams here just to have me be able to really focus in on what I'm about to show you. I'm going to say I want to create a new team. So I click on Teams and I click on the plus sign. I have to have permissions in my organization to create a team, but let's assume that that's the case. So I'm going to click the plus sign. I'm going to say create a team. I give my team a name. I'm going to say AAA, so it appears at the top of search results for this demo team. And I'll give it a description, blah, 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 whatever that is. Then I have an option. Is this going to be private or public? 99% of the teams I've ever created have been private because I want to be deterministic or specific about who can join that team as the team owner. If I choose public, people can search for and see my team in public group settings where they can search for teams or groups, and then they can petition to join a team. Some teams are like that. Hey, we're going to have a team about the planning committee. You're welcome to join. Well, that you would want to make public so people in your organization could join. But most of the teams that I've created have actually been private, 99% of them. So anyways, going back to this, I'm going to leave that to private. And then this is the big addition. Name your first channel. You're no longer stuck with General. I can call this first channel, or maybe I'll call this Project 100. You know, whatever I want to call it, I now can participate in that. Then you click create, and Teams is going to go against its default template. It's called a template. The default template's called from scratch. It's going to create one channel. It used to be the general channel. These days, they'll give it a name, whatever you call it. The team has now been created. Behind the scenes, it's created a Microsoft 365 group. It's made you, the person creating team, the owner of that group and the owner of the team. And now it's saying, all right, it's created a shared mailbox and Exchange Online, and it's created a SharePoint Online site collection for the team to collaborate in. You don't have to go to any of those applications. You can interact with them all right from the Teams user interface. Remember, it's your one-stop shop. So now, what I'm typically going to want to do is I'm going to want to invite people to the team. So let me invite Albert. If I've got an Albert Council. Let me invite Albert. The default is going to be to make Albert a member, but I could, if I felt so, I could promote Albert to owner. I'm going to leave Albert as a member. He's going to get an email. Again, it's not a real person, it's make-believe. But now I've got a team, and it's based on the from scratch template, which is the default, and it starts with one channel. In the past, that would have said general. So you're going to be in a whole bunch of teams. You're going to see that general channel. That's because that's what it used to be. Every channel will start off with 3 tabs, and Microsoft's had some movement on what they have these be. Right now, it's posts, files, and notes. The post tab allows you to have a running instant message like chat with everybody on the team that has access to that channel. So I'm going to say welcome to the team. And then that's my title. And down here, I'll say welcome to the team. It's gonna be awesome. And then when I've finished composing my message, I click post, and now everybody that's part of that team will be able to immediately see everything on this post because it's on the Project 100 channel, the first channel, and that is not a private channel, meaning everybody on the team has access to it. The Files tab is where anybody on the team can upload files. That's a member that has permissions, can upload files or add files, or you can even write from here, say new Word document, and I can say instructions for attendance, and I can create this Word document. I don't have to leave and open up Microsoft Word. I don't have to leave and go create a new SharePoint site collection. I can just immediately begin editing. So I can say instructions, document, and I'll go a couple lines and type equals rand, which is a formula for pasting in self-generated content. It's kind of a cool function if you're a teacher or instructor. It's nice to be able to do that. I'll make that first part bold. Ironically enough, this is being stored in a site collection that was created for this team, and that's it. I have this document. It's right there. It's called instructions. Anybody on the team can access that. They can upload it. They can edit it if they're members or owners. That's the Files tab. The Notes tab, they've changed this to Notes, which opens what's called a OneNote document for the people on the team to collaborate on. And if I wanted to extend the functionality of that channel, I could click the plus sign and add a tab. And what I'd be really doing is I'd be adding an app. And depending on the apps that you have access to, that's what you will potentially have available to you to add apps to that particular team. So teams are made of a name, roles, channels. Those channels can be public or private, but the default teams are going to use that first channel, which used to be called the general channel, but now has been called whatever you want to name it. Now, the chat functionality, you click on the chat, you can immediately start chatting. If you're on the calendar, if you click the calendar icon on the app bar, just checking the time here. If I go to my demo box and I click on the calendar icon on the app bar, that opens up my calendar. Here, I can schedule a meeting. I can schedule a webinar, a town hall meeting where I'm one-to-many generally, a virtual appointment where guests can enter and I can let them in or not, controlled content meeting, a live event, or a webinar. This is very easy. I can also just say schedule a meeting, and that will be your typical meeting like, hey, I'm going to schedule the Monday meeting. You give it a title, you add the attendees, you decide if it's going to repeat or not. So I could say maybe it's going to repeat daily, it's going to repeat every day, and it's going to end and next on the 26th. I'm setting these are the same types of repeating meeting. I think I just misspelled both repeating and meeting. And these are the types of things you would set up in a typical Outlook meeting. You can attach a meeting to a channel. You can invite people right from here. You can set this up, and whoever you've invited to the meeting, it's going to appear on their calendar and they can join. And that's a meeting where you can have video conferencing and exchange, and the presenter, whoever's assigned the presenter, can share their screen, upload files, and have a meeting experience. And that's a scheduled meeting. You also can say, hey, let's have a meeting right now. You can click Meet Now and launch a meeting right away. It will just launch a meeting. You can invite people, and that is a very good use. So the calendar really focuses around the idea of meetings and the meeting experience. The calls icon, again, you can initiate a call. The meetings icon, you can initiate meetings as well, and they'll appear on your calendar. And then the apps icon, again, depending on how your organization has that configured, you potentially can add apps that you can then go to channels and add a tab to a channel and attach an app, and you'll have that information. On the notifications, keep in mind that you have some control over the settings on your notification settings page that we talked about earlier. You can determine whether or not they make a sound. That's a really handy thing to turn on or turn off. Some people, you'll hear their desk ding, 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 and that's generally something I like to personally turn off, or you may decide that you want to turn that on. Another thing on the settings page is this notifications and activity. These are where you're going to control not only what happens when you get notified, but what you're notified about. And we went to that earlier, and I pointed out several options. You'll want to explore those. When you go to create a team, the default is to base it upon the out-of-the-box template, which is called from scratch that we saw. Adding a channel, once a team's created, you can mouse over the ellipse and say add a channel, and you can choose whether it's a standard channel, which is the default, or whether it's going to be a private channel. We saw the post files and tabs. And then this is something that some people don't know about. They added this, and this is a bunch of different templates. I'm going to go to my demo box. I'm going to click on my Teams icon, and I'm going to go here and I'm going to say, all right, I want to add a team. And I'll say create a team. But instead of just using the out-of-the-box one, I'm going to click on this More Create Teams options. And this is just a wonderful area that Microsoft has introduced. And that's these different templates. So they've had a lot of people using Teams, and they said, look, the default is from scratch. But if you're working on creating a team around adopting Office, maybe start with this template, or managing a store, start with that template, quality and safety, that template, et cetera, et cetera. And these are awesome. I'd encourage you to explore some of these and learn. A lot of them come with extra channels, extra tabs, and extra functionality that are very, very helpful in the context of doing that particular type of activity. So that is different teams and creating teams. And I just want to go over a couple of tips and tricks. If you put the @ sign in front of someone's name, so if I go to my demo box and I click on my chat here, and you can see that I chat a lot with Amy or Adam. If I go down and I'm chatting with Amy, I could say @ and type Adam, and it's going to look at and find Adam. It's not finding him right now, of course, because I'm doing a demo. But if I do that and send that out, it's going to let Adam know, if he has his notifications on, that I just did a post and involved him. You can bookmark different chats, different channels, different posts. There's little bookmark icons that can be helpful. There's a list of keyboard shortcuts. If you download the slides for this webinar, this class, really this course, you can look up these keyboard shortcuts. They can be very helpful. And it's a really good idea to be adding the different files, using the files tabs, and letting people know, hey, we can go right there and collaborate easy. Microsoft does a great job of keeping up to date their help system. You'll see the help icon all over the place. It's not a waste of time. Their help system is excellent. And remember, when you're creating chats and you're creating posts, you actually have some rich text formatting, so you can make your messages even more impactful. Let me go back one. And you can, make some text bold or italic or underline, or change some colors or highlight things. You have some rich text editing capabilities. And then remember, take advantage of the fact that you can control when you're notified about things that are happening.